Hi, I'm Greg,
Hi, I'm Will.
and welcome to our next episode of Theme Parks and Patents.
Today we're talking about what I believe are the wheels on Matterhorn, I believe.
Yes, it's for the whole mountain. So we're gonna go back and do some older stuff here, and we may kind of do some of the historic patents, even though we've done those in the past, like Haunted Mansion. These patents are all expired, but it's interesting to go back and look and see what they were actually patenting when these things were new. And this is going to be the oldest one we've done so far. For the Matterhorn.
What about Indiana Jones?
Indiana Jones was like the 80s.
Oh.
This is 1960, so this is super old. Haunted Mansion I think was the 70s if I remember. So we're gonna go through it and it just talks about the ride mechanism mainly, which is kind of interesting that this is even new for 1960. I don't know what the state of roller coasters were, but it's interesting to look at what they were actually patenting back then. Thoughts on Matterhorn?
Not much. Besides, I'm fine with all the other Yeti animatronics, but I hate that Yeti on the lift hill, like the one behind the ice, the screen projection. I hate that Yeti. It's
Why?
So loud.
Oh, okay.
Also, you know how there's that whole thing where it's like there's a basketball court in the top of Matterhorn?
Yep.
There's actually a little thing where you can kind of see up there.
Oh, okay.
On the ride.
When it used to be open when the Skyway went through it too.
Oh, yeah.
You can actually see in there.
What's the Skyway?
They had like the gondolas.
Oh, yeah.
That would go through the mountain. So, Matterhorn's one of the oldest rides at Disneyland. It definitely feels like the oldest rides at Disneyland. In the patent, they were mainly patenting the idea that it had a braking system, which would be your standard braking to stop the cars in an emergency. They also, like most roller coasters, they make sections of the roller coaster, so if there's a car stop in one section, there's a way to always stop a car in the section before it so it doesn't go run into it. So they have that kind of braking. On the figure one, it shows the mountain and the track. It's not the real track, but just an example track kind of going swirly through the mountain here. 26 is the braking sections. There's only 2 of them, but they would do it in each section to stop the cars if there's an emergency or to stop the cars for loading or at the end. And then they also talk about, you can see the lift hill, and then what a lot of the claims are about are these governors, which is essentially just a spinning tire. But I don't know how new this was in the 60s, but apparently it was. They basically you can see it on the ride. There's tires in the track. They spin at the speed they want the cars to be traveling. So when your car hits it, it naturally speeds up or slows down to the speed of what the tire's going, just based on inertia of the tire.
Kind of like one of those magnetic launches, but instead it can slow you down like a brake. Yeah. And yeah.
You could do both. They just spin the tire at one speed, and then that tends to make your car, whether it's going too fast or too slow, you would tend to pick up the speed to regulate to the speed of the tire. And so going through the patent here, I guess the other interesting things they mention in here, they talk about so they have a friction pad. We'll talk about that in a second. They show basically there's some sort of a friction pad on the bottom of the car, which would be some sort of rough surface for the tire to grip onto and for the brakes to grip onto. Obviously, so if you want some sort of coefficient of friction between the two surfaces. If you had 2 slippery surfaces you tried to brake, you would just slide, like ice skating. So you want something rough that the tires or the brakes can grab onto. So they also talk about the idea of wetting this. And so I'm not sure I was looking through some videos and the videos we took when we were just there. They talk about one way to wet it is with a sprayer, and in the mountains they show that right as you go into the lift hill at 22, and they have 101 tucked down there, is the sprayer, which would spray that pad on the bottom of your car, so then it would stay wet, and so it would cool basically the friction surfaces as you go through the ride. And they talk about this, that there's still enough friction on the surface, or enough coefficient. It's still rough enough surface that it'll provide braking, but it's just to cool it. They do that somewhere else. Where else do they spray water on the track? Do you remember?
In Criticoaster.
Yeah, so they do that.
Well, they mainly spray on the launchers so they don't overheat.
Yeah, same thing here. You just don't want the brakes to overheat and malfunction.
Fun fact. I'm not entirely sure if this is true, but I believe it is. But like when they were first planning the Matterhorn, they weren't planning on adding a Yeti.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so then like a little bit later, they decided they could add it.
Did they have a Yeti at opening day?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I didn't know that for sure. So figure 1 shows that you can spray them in. And I don't know. I was looking. Sorry, back to my point on that one. It's so wet because of you going through the lakes. It's hard to tell if there's actually a sprayer at the base of the hill. That's something they may not do before, but that's something we can definitely check on in the future. If that sprayer is something they still do when the car goes up the hill. And then obviously the lake at the end, which is shown in figure 2, which is used for braking as well. But then I didn't know, because they talk about that. They did that Imagineering series where they talked about how much Walt liked that idea that the car would go through the water to brake it. But that's also a wetting area, and that may be the main place they wet the friction pads on the car now, because that's on the bottom of the car, so obviously it gets really wet in the lake. And then if you see like the loading area, everything's wet because the cars had just gone through the lake. But so that's one thing to keep the friction pads cool as it rides around. But
what if it was like Tiana's when you go through the lake and you just get soaked?
Yeah.
Like that Mama Odie drop.
I've been in the front of that thing where it dumped a bunch of water on me. So that was interesting. I thought the lake was just for braking. I didn't know that they actually wanted that to cool the friction pad as well. So moving on, we'll go look at the friction pad. So this just shows figure 3, and 3A shows 3A is the dogs that can hook up on the chain on the lift hill, and then there's other dogs under their 87 that keep you from rolling backwards. So 90 in figure 3 is the whole kind of ski looking flat surface of the bottom is the friction pad. And so that's what's hitting the tires and what's going to hit the brakes. And that's what's going to slow you down, speed you up, or just make it so there's something on the car for the tires or brakes on the track to grip onto. Figure 4 is the same thing, shows the bottom of the car, and the friction pad right in the middle there is 90. Then the wheels 67, 68 that are riding along the tubular track 40. Figure 5 shows that so the friction pad is now sandwiched between the brake. It's what this shows. So this is the bottom of the car on the tracks.
Sandwich.
Yep. and then 94 underneath there is what they call an electromechanical brake that can come up and hit the car to stop it. And so this would be for, at the end of the ride or for emergency purposes. It wouldn't be like for in-ride braking to slow you down. This would be like a very violent stop or a full stop. Figure 6 shows the bottom of the car. Again, 90 is the friction pad, and then you can see how the whole brake system here, 96, can be raised up on the piston to stop the car. So figure 7, so now we're getting in talking about our governor wheels, and you can see these, they just look like, they look like ATV or small wheelbarrow tires. You can see all the people in the car, and they're coming over the wheel, and that's going to either slow you up or speed you down. Figure 10 shows a cross section through that wheel. So the whole bottom part here is the governor, and then you can see it's showing like a rubber tire cut in half. Your cross section looking at it, and you can see the rubber tire hitting 90 to either speed you up or slow you down. Figure 8's a side view of the governor on a flywheel system that creates the inertia. So then you would tend to go to the speed of the wheel, the governing wheel, as your car goes over it. And figure 9 is just the top view down. So this is where you can see the tube, tubular track, and this is as you would go over it. Figure 11, same thing, but from the looking straight on, like an elevational view. You can see the cars in dotted lines above it, but you can see the wheel as it hits the car.
Sorry.
So that is it. Just rolling through it. So that's what they claim. I thought they do talk about the wetting a little bit. I thought you know,
I
one
thought you
of the,
said wedding. They do talk about the wedding. I'm like, do they do Disneyland weddings in the Matterhorn?
oh no, wetting, W-E-T-T.
Okay.
So making the friction pad wet.
Yeah.
So that's me. I thought they would talk more about this lake, the water for braking, because I know that's something they talk about in their videos and how much Walt liked that. But they don't really talk. They talk about it more as a, you know, that it can slow the car, but in the claims, they claim more of the wetting, the way that it's used to wet the pad to keep it cool during use and not overheat and provide the braking they want. So I thought that was interesting. And then most of the other claims are just to the governing wheels, which I'm surprised that's the first time anyone used it. But I don't know where roller coasters were at in 1960, but that must have been a new innovation. So
Yeah.
So that's all I had for this is the old Matterhorn patent. Pretty interesting, pretty simple, but that's what they thought of. You know, the thing. Obviously, the lake's still there. I don't know if the sprayer is still there. They may just go off the, you know, the lake obviously soaks that friction pad, so they may not need the sprayers anymore. And then the governing wheels are all still there, and I'm sure the braking system's still there too.
Yeah.
So, all right. You want to see anything else? Anything about Matterhorn?
Not really, other than it just looks like a giant pile of whipped cream from that pile, or from that picture right there.
It does. Looks like it's an interesting drawing. But anyway.
I'm gonna go grab our little Yeti. Okay, I got our little Yeti. Here he is, our little
There's
Yeti.
the Yeti. He's even roaring or snoring. Oh, he's stuck into the table.
Yes, he's a little Yeti bum.
All right, well, you want to sign us out?
Yeah. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great day. Come here, buddy.
Say goodbye, Yeti.